It's Movie Time is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center, 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. Further details and showtimes online at gatewayfilmcenter.com.
The award-winning It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to the shows and read reviews online at wcbe.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Helmut Crumling.
And this is It's Movie Time. Helmut, Jude Law, famous face. We recently saw him in...
We saw him in the Grand Budapest Hotel.
We did.
Where he played a tweedy, modest, non-communicative author.
Are you telling me he's in a different role?
Somewhat different.
We're looking at Dom Hemingway today. And Hemingway, why do you think that last name?
You know, I was thinking about that and I couldn't come up with a good answer except that the language is important for this film and possibly that's why, but I'm not convinced that's a good answer.
Well, I'm with you. I think language is the keystone of this terrific film, British film, about a Cockney ex-con trying to get himself back into the real life. But I think besides his use of language, there's that Hemingway-esque tough guyness about him. So it works for me in those levels. Or otherwise it's just a complete contrast with the rough character. But may I indulge you with a quote to give you an idea of how brilliant the language is in this film. He says to a woman who has stolen money from him, and he's happened just to come upon her, and he whispers this into her ear. "Oh, I'll tell you who I am. I'm the effer who will tear your nose off with my teeth. I'm the effer who will gut you with a dull cheese knife and sing Gilbert and Sullivan while I do it. I'm the effer who will dump your dead body in a freezing cold lake and watch you sink to the bottom like so much shit. I am that effer. That's the effer who I am." So this is not something to bring your family to.
Thanks. How did you remember that?
I didn't. IMDb has a quote section, which if you're fortunate, they'll quote, and usually from the trailer, and I have to make sure that it's also with the trailer. As you know, I don't take notes during a movie, and I don't like to be distracted.
I remember the scene with the extraordinary, beautiful Romanian woman.
Oh, yes.
Who turns out to have stolen his money.
Yes.
Yeah. No, as we know, the director and writer of this film is known for this film. Matador was his previous success. His name is Richard Shepard.
Right.
And who obviously enjoyed making this movie, as did his three main characters.
Yeah. And we're talking Jude Law.
Jude Law is Dom Hemingway.
Right.
A poetic, profanity-spouting, pumped-up ape of a man.
Richard Grant as Dickie Black.
Right, Dickie Black, who's his right-hand man,
He's
but he
delightful.
doesn't have a left hand.
All right. I'd love to see where he has to find it.
and Damien Bechir, known better in Mexico, but he's also made his name in this country, and he's the boss of the trio.
Oh, he's very good.
Cool but dangerous.
Oh, he's wonderful, slick.
And he's called Mr. Fontaine. He only has a last name.
Yes. And Dom, of course, is just outrageous with him. He believes he owes him money, and he goes about just almost verbally abusing this Don. Different from
he gives
Dom.
one of his poetic, obscene-laden speeches.
Yes.
After he sits down in front of a picture of a baboon.
Yes, that's...
And you know, baboons are the apes most closely related to humans.
Wonderful.
Well, in the case of Jude Law's character, Dom, they are very closely related. They're almost identical.
You know, I think I said to you, we both agreed, that if Matthew McConaughey won last year for the Dallas Buyers Club, why can't Jude Law win this year for Dom Hemingway? And I say that because the roles are similar while the characters are different. But both of them are rough guys who have a certain aesthetic sense about them, even in the circumstances that are hardly aesthetic. And I believe that Jude Law and Dom Hemingway is, of course, a much ruder and rougher character, if you can believe that, than McConaughey's.
And he's more poetic
Yeah, oh,
in a lewd way. You know, in the opening scene, he fills the screen. He's bulked up somehow, not all muscle, but he's.
well, let me
Yeah.
put you in here on this. He gained 30 pounds for this role.
Which is the weight McConaughey lost. for
Right,
this
thank
role.
you, yes.
Yeah.
And you know how he did it?
No.
He drank 12 cans of Coke a day.
Wow.
Oh, yes, but he's clearly bulked up.
Very healthy thing to do.
Yeah, from the
But you notice it isn't just muscle. It's
Yes.
it's weight.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that scene, though, which was startling, the opening scene, and I had warned your wife Elizabeth about it. I thought she might be offended. It turned out not to be quite as offensive as I thought.
He spouts vulgar, though creative metaphors, lewdly lauding his member.
Yes, yes.
And it is quite a startling scene. And I'm a little bit concerned about some people in the audience who are offended by American Hustle. What will they think about the language of this film?
All right.
Yeah.
Well, he is in a prison and he's being serviced by a
Yeah.
fellow prisoner. We don't see that during most of it. It's just a shot from the midsection up. But it's quite brilliant and just only slightly startling when you see somebody emerge from there. But it's a good way to begin a very rude film, and it's the beginning of his redemption. Really, if you take both McConaughey's character and his, they're moving toward redemption. That's not disclosing much. You know that always happens in these type of films.
Although the redemption isn't quite as clear as in Dallas Buyers Club. You know, he really does turn swearing into an art form. If there's an Oscar for swearing, I think he's a lock.
It's possible.
But you know, only an actor who has played on a stage in London, and I don't know if you know, but he played Henry V, and
Yes.
Henry V has some very ruthless qualities. Then he played, or before that, I think he played Hamlet, and he played a more physical, raging Hamlet. And I think without having played those two roles, he may not have been able to pull off this role. Many American actors don't get to do the London stage.
No, you're right. And
I think this helps explain why some British actors are just superior.
oh yeah, and the characters that you described that he has played have that poetic quality next to that roughness, which I think he really surprisingly brings off very well.
You've been to London so often to see plays. I'm
Yes.
surprised you didn't see one of those two. But
No, I haven't. It just perhaps it's been a few years since I have been, but I would surely go back there to see him. I'm now a real Jude Law devotee. I have watched him, but I have never been as impressed with him as I have in this role.
right, he takes our breath away at times.
Yes, yeah, and there are moments in here too. But it's not all rude. There are moments of tenderness in the sense that he wishes to reconcile with his daughter, who really does not want to have anything to do with him for good reason. And that part of his redemption is a difficult one for him. And maybe as we move toward the end of the film, a little bit contrived. I'm even thinking the ending is a bit contrived without disclosing it.
Right,
I'm not
right.
quite certain that it fits well.
Yeah. I think what keeps it from being overly contrived is that there's some doubt that there really will be redemption.
Yes,
One isn't convinced that it's going to work.
and that's true.
Yeah.
And part of that ending is the fact that we still see the old Dom
Talking to the beautiful.
Exactly right.
woman who
Yes,
stole
in
his
that
money.
whole sequence,
Yeah.
we do see him
Yeah.
as not necessarily having redeemed himself. We may have with the daughter, but not necessarily that.
You know, he hasn't seen his daughter for 12 years because he spent 12 years in jail,
Yes.
which we haven't mentioned. And as he's released, toilet paper comes flying out of the various cells. So he clearly has made an impression in that jail.
Yes.
He's gained respect or something
Yes.
to make the prisoners give him that salute.
And
Yeah.
what I like about that redemptive process is that at its very beginning of the scene that you described, that first one, his monologue, and then you move in when he actually confronts a man who has been living with his divorced wife, and he beats him up.
Yeah.
And the guy says, she's divorced, and according to his rules, that doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
He still violated some kind of a code that he felt this fellow should. But it's a bloody business.
Yeah. It's the single most vicious scene,
Yes.
disturbing scene. So the first few days after his release are spent almost killing a guy, and then the other days are spent on drugs and debauchery.
Yes, and there's some very funny scenes of debauchery,
Yeah.
as well as it being somewhat discomforting. They are ingenious, and his language always carries the scene. And there's a certain, it's benign. In many cases, it's just benign. You just look at it and say, oh, that's Dom. Just the way his friends there watching him beat up that guy. Oh, that's Dom.
Right. Richard Grant as Dickie is sort of plays our role. He's the observer.
Yes.
And he says, be careful, but then he smiles and seems to enjoy what's going on.
Richard Grant is marvelous in this film.
He often plays a sidekick
Oh,
in films.
yes.
He's done that time and time again. Yeah.
So he wears these yellow glasses that are striking. And anyway, it's a great role. But Helmut, we're at that point. As educators, we are required to award a grade to this film.
Yet I can't give it an A because of some of the disturbing language and scenes.
Okay?
But I'd be happy to give it an A minus.
Oh, yeah, you're great. And that's, of course, what I am going to award it. I already have in my online review, which will be coming out this week. But I'm the same. But not for those reasons. I think there may be a little bit too much of Dom for me, that I think they could have backed off and had some more, say, from a couple of those other characters we talked about. But regardless, it's an A minus because it's an imperfectly beautiful film.
I agree.